So last week I showed you guys how to use a Google form in order to track data from the student end, and I just kind of wanted to follow up and share where that idea has gone. The administration at my school saw the idea and they really liked it, and they asked if I could turn that into a teacher piece where the teacher could use the Google form and track their standards throughout the year in the same way, with the color coding and the bar graph and things like that. So we were able to figure that out. Now I'm just going to show you guys how to make one of those. And if you would like a copy of some of the content that I've created, I'd be able to share a copy of that form with you. That'd be great. So the one I'm going to show you an example of, this is for in Texas 5th grade science. And basically what I had to do was I created a form, and the first question, I'll kind of click on it. It is a drop down, and then I had to put in every single standard. I just started with the content objectives, 5.5a, and then on top of that I had to create, if you click this button right here, that's add a section. So as you can see, I have added 20 sections. So I had to create a section for 5.5a and then 5.5b. I also copied in what the actual standard is. I just thought that would be useful if the teacher's going to be using that as a data tracker. So once again, the first question is a drop down, and you have to do a separate line for each standard, 5.5a, 5.5b, and then you have to go through and actually create the sections. You create the sections by clicking on those two horizontal bars, and you have to title it, and then within it you have to create a short answer question. But then once again I title it the same thing, 5.5a. The other thing you have to do when you create that section is it will default to continue to next section. You have to go in and change each section to submit form. Okay. Then the last step is when you go back to that first question. So first thing you do is make all the lines over here, then you make all the sections down here, and once all the sections are made, then you have to link each line to that section. So here you can see it, 5.5a goes to section 2, which is 5.5a. And the way I made that happen was I had to click on those three dots and see how it's selected go to section based on answer. So once I selected that, put the check mark, that gave me the option to say, okay, well, if I select 5.5a, then that's going to take me to section 2, which is 5.5a. Okay. Let me show you how that looks. So functionality-wise, I'm going to choose 5.5a. When I hit next, that takes me to this section. And then for my answer, I'm just going to populate or input the data that I got for that TEKS. So let's say the kids did, let's say they did really well and they got a 100%. So then I just hit submit, and then it automatically collects that piece of information. So the beauty of this system is that you're using the Google form to input your data, but the data gets put into a spreadsheet. So here's what my spreadsheet looks like. I did have to do some formatting. I can show you guys how to do that again. But as you can see, it was timestamped right here. On this date at that time, I put in 5.5a and then I got 100. And then in this cell right here, you can see I'm taking the average of this whole column from C3 to C108. So any number that gets put in this column is just going to be included, and this is going to find that average. I was also able to do some conditional formatting. You can see that the 78 is a darker shade of green. As you get closer to 50, it turns yellow, and as you get closer to 0, it turns red. So you have it in that option as you can see the data that way. Let's put in another piece of data just so we can see how kind of instant it is. So if I'm still working in 5.5a, let's say we just took a mini quiz and the kids did really well, and let's say we got a 95. So you hit submit. There you go. The 95 pops in automatically, and as you can see, my score went up. The next thing I kind of worked through is I said, okay, well, this is cool, but it's kind of a lot to scroll over. I was looking for a more visual way to see my data, so I just turned it into a graph. And this graph kind of works just as instantly as the other tracker. So we'll submit another response, and I'll put in, let's do 5.5a again. We're working on that one. Let's say for some reason maybe the test was really hard, the kids really struggled with it, so we'll do something drastic. Let's say the average was a 25. So we hit submit, and as you can see, it dropped my bar graph. So as you continue to input data, not only does it update here, you can see my average went down to 73 because of that 25. So not only does the number update here, but it also updates in that graph. And like I said, the purpose of this was so that I could get kind of a big picture idea of which standards I had covered and how my students did on each standard. So I'm imagining at the end of the year, I'll have, each one of these will have a different bar, and when we're getting ready to take the state assessment, I'll be able to see exactly which standards we struggled with the most and which ones we did really well on, and I think that's going to be a really powerful tool. So let's walk through how to make that spreadsheet and how to turn that data into a graph in a really nice visual way. This is that same tracker. I just created a copied version and I put in some responses. In order to make that spreadsheet, you're going to click on this green little button here where it says Create Spreadsheet. Yes, we're going to create a new spreadsheet. And it's initially going to look like this. As you can tell, this looks a lot different than the one I had. There's no averages, there's no colors, and obviously there's no graphs. So let's talk about how to do that. First thing we're going to do is we're going to click on row 1 because we need to select that. And then once it's completely highlighted, we're going to right click, insert one above. Now that we've got that extra row on top, I'm going to select that first standard right above it. 5.5a is my first one. That cell right above it, and I want to insert a function that's an average. Now they need to know, what are we finding an average of? I want to find an average of this whole column. So I'm going to click on the first box in that column, scroll down and hit shift, click on the bottom box. Now that highlights the whole entire column. Hit enter, and there we go. We've got that average. 90, 85, 80. Average is going to be 85. So another thing I want to do is I want to assign those colors to it. In order to do that, I'm going to select that box again, and I'm going to hit Format, Additional Formatting. I'm going to go over to Color Scale, and then where it shows different shades of green, I don't want that. I want our classic stoplight. And now I need to manipulate my minimum point, my midpoint, and my maximum point. So first thing I'm going to do is change all of those to number. That's what's going to be input. My minimum I need at 0. Mid is 50, that's fine, and my max is going to be 100. I also need to swap these colors. I want 0 to be red, and I want 100 to be green. Hit done. And then the beautiful thing about spreadsheets is now that I've got the average and the color formatting, all I have to do is hover over the bottom right of this cell. You see that little blue box? Once you go over it, you see it looks like a crosshair. I'm going to click on that, and then I'm going to drag it over. And what that's doing is copying all of the rules from that cell into all of the cells that I'm selecting. Now you're going to see this hashtag div, that looks like an error code. That's just because there's no data. So if we click on 1, this is saying to find the average of G3 to 105, but there's no numbers in G3 to 105, so that's why it looks like it's an error. But that's okay. The same thing would work, but we can go back and put in a data set. So let's go ahead and put in one more piece of data. Let's do the second one, 5.5b. Next, and let's say the kid's got a 65 on this. So we hit submit, jump back over, and my data gets put in automatically. There's my 65, and because it's the only number, that's the average that we have. Now in order to make the graph, what I'm going to do is, I don't need this timestamp here. That's just bugs me, so on top of it I put score. And what I'm going to do is select all of the cells in which I want the graph to be made from. And then there's a button. There's a button that looks like a little bar chart, and that's what we're going to click. And that is going to create our bar graph. Now our bar graph doesn't look exactly how we want it to look, so we're going to have to do some editing. First thing I'm going to do is I need to switch the rows and columns, and that is just a formatting issue. And then the next thing I need to do is identify my x-axis. So I'm going to click on that, and it says I need to select a range. So the range that I want is, I want from this cell, hit shift again, and then click on 5.10b. As you can see, so that says my x-axis is going to be from C2 to U2. Okay, and that put my category there on the horizontal axis. Now that also looks kind of small, so another thing I like to do, if I click on these three dots, I can move this to its own sheet, and that makes it look really big. It's really visual. It's titled Chart 1. I'm just going to rename that graph. So once again, I've got all my spreadsheet data here, but then it's connected to the graph. So if we put in one more piece of information, let's do that same TEK that we struggled with. We got a 65. Let's say you did some reteaching, gave another mini assessment. The kids did really well. They got 100%. Previously they had a 65. You can see how it popped up. Now we're at a 82.5. If you hover over it, it gives you the percentage and it tells you what that standard is, 5.5b. Once again, I am in Texas, so the ones that I have created are for the Texas standards called the TEKS. If you'd like, I have 5th grade science and then 6th, 7th, and 8th grade ELA. I have those forms already created. If you'd like, just shoot me a message. I'd be happy to either help you create them or see if I can find a way to send you the form itself. The thing about sharing the form, that's fine, but in the formatting that you do in the spreadsheet, that does have to be done by each individual person. I can't send you my spreadsheet because it's connected to my Google form. So while I can share the Google form, the spreadsheet, you're going to have to format and do all that on your own, but hopefully this video kind of helps you walk through that process.